Darren Vogt stood at the entrance of the Galactic neural nexus, his heart pounding with anticipation. This was the moment he had been waiting for, his first day as the lead data architect of the largest and most advanced AI-driven supercomputer in the galaxy, the omniscient construct of reality and evolution, OCR. Decades of study and rigorous testing had led him here, to the heart of the most secretive and powerful technological marvel known to sentient species. The OCRE was no ordinary computational matrix. It could predict galactic economic shifts, model entire planetary ecosystems, and now, it would tackle its greatest challenge yet, simulating the evolution of one of the universe's most mysterious species, humans. Darren had never personally encountered a human. They were considered myths in most circles, dismissed as ancient folklore. Stories whispered in dark corners of elite academies suggested that they had once been a powerful race capable of unimaginable feats. Some claimed humans had evolved on a death world, a planet so inhospitable it defied galactic norms. But Darren wasn't concerned with legends, he was a scientist, and his job was to uncover the truth behind these ancient beings. He strode down the corridor, his thoughts racing as he prepared for the momentous task ahead. This simulation was unlike any other. The OCRE would not only trace human development from their most primitive form but would also dive into their complex social, psychological, and, he smirked, reproductive behaviors. "Time to start the show," he muttered under his breath, the tension in his voice barely contained. As he entered the control room, the sterile scent of advanced technology filled the air. The OCRE's glowing core pulsed softly, surrounded by an array of floating holographic displays showing data streams and configurations. Technicians and AI assistants flitted about, making last-minute adjustments. "Initiate simulation parameters," Darren ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Parameters set," the AI interface replied smoothly. "Do you wish to review the final adjustments to the human evolution model?" Darren scanned the details on the interface. The timeline was set to begin approximately 200,000 years ago, on the fabled Earth, the supposed homeworld of the humans. The planet's unique characteristics had been meticulously recreated, from its harsh weather patterns to its dangerous predators. The real challenge, however, would be observing how these creatures adapted and evolved in such an environment. "Let's see what they've got," he said, finalizing the input and initiating the simulation. For a few moments, the room was silent except for the gentle hum of the OCRE's processors. Then the displays flickered to life, showcasing a rich and detailed world forming before their eyes. Earth's landscape sprawled out in breathtaking realism, jagged mountains, dense forests, vast oceans, and arid deserts. Life began to take shape in the simulation as the first primitive humans appeared. But something was different. Darren's eyes narrowed as he zoomed in on the earliest hominids. They were supposed to be slow, clumsy, and struggling to survive. Instead, these creatures exhibited an unexpected agility, quickly adapting to their surroundings. Within minutes, the simulation accelerated through millennia, and these humans were already constructing tools, forming social hierarchies, and, Darren paused, a curious smile tugging at the corner of his lips, developing complex mating rituals. "Interesting," he murmured as he focused on a particular group of humans engaged in a rather intricate display of courtship. Their bodies, toned from years of survival, intertwined in ways that suggested both strategic alliances and raw desire. He watched as their primal instincts gave way to more calculated seductions, drawing in their partners with a mix of aggression and finesse. "These creatures are more cunning than I anticipated," Darren said, leaning back in his chair, intrigued by the rapid development of their reproductive strategies. The males competed fiercely for dominance, while the females demonstrated a shrewd selection process, choosing mates not just based on strength but also intelligence and creativity. One pair stood out, an alpha male and a highly resourceful female, their mating dance a mesmerizing blend of passion and cold calculation. As their union unfolded, Darren couldn't help but admire the intensity of the scene. The simulation had captured every detail, the glisten of sweat on their skin, the primal growls of pleasure, the power struggle that underpinned every movement. This was not just procreation, It was a battle of wills, a test of dominance and submission that had evolved into something far more sophisticated than he had expected. "They're playing a game," Darren whispered to himself, "and it's a game of survival and seduction." The OCRE's processors began to hum louder, struggling to keep up with the exponential growth in complexity. The human's evolution wasn't just physical, it was emotional, intellectual, and deeply rooted in their sexual dynamics. Every relationship, every bond they formed was steeped in tension and intrigue. Darren's fascination grew as he delved deeper into their social structures. These humans didn't just survive, they thrived on chaos, using their primal urges to manipulate and dominate one another. In their world, power was often won in the bedroom as much as on the battlefield. But then, something strange happened. The simulation started to lag. The OCRE, which had handled simulations of entire star systems without breaking a sweat, was beginning to falter under the weight of human evolution. The humans were changing too fast, their behaviors evolving at a rate that defied logic. What was supposed to be a slow and steady progression had turned into a chaotic explosion of innovation, lust, and power struggles. Darren glanced at the data streams, his pulse quickening. What the hell is going on? The OCRE's alarms blared, and the holographic displays flickered wildly. Warning, system overload. Simulation reaching critical mass. His heart raced as he tried to stabilize the system, but it was too late. The humans had outgrown the simulation. Their rapid development had overwhelmed the OCRE's processors, causing a cascading failure across the entire network. "Shut it down," Darren shouted, panic rising in his throat. "Shut it down now." But the damage was done. The last thing Darren saw before the entire system crashed was the face of one of the simulated humans. A male, his eyes filled with a dangerous, primal intelligence, staring straight at him as if he knew he was being watched. And then, darkness. Darren's vision swam as he tried to piece together what had just happened. The control room was dark, save for the faint emergency lights blinking rhythmically around him. A deafening silence hung in the air, an unnatural stillness after the chaotic crash of the OCRE system. The largest supercomputer in the galaxy had gone dark, and with it, the future of his research. His fingers hovered over the console, muscles tense as if they were ready to act, but there was nothing left to be done. The screens were dead, the once brilliant displays of data now replaced by a void of flickering static. Darren slumped back into his chair, heart racing, mind struggling to grasp the enormity of the situation. "What just happened?" he muttered, still in disbelief. Humans. The humans had caused this. The rapid evolution, the strange behavior, the intensity of their reproductive and social dynamics, it had all been too much for the OCRE to handle. How could a simulation, just pixels and code, crash something as advanced as this? His mind replayed the final moments of the simulation, that human male's piercing gaze staring back at him through the screen, as if aware of the impending collapse. It wasn't just a glitch. There was something more, something deeper happening in the recesses of that simulation. The humans had surpassed the bounds of what even the most advanced AI could predict. Their complex drives and desires had accelerated their evolution beyond all reason. The heavy doors of the control room slid open with a hiss, and Arya Naveen, the chief technician, rushed in, her expression a mixture of fear and confusion. "Darren, what the hell happened?" He looked up at her, still dazed, barely able to form the words. "It crashed. The OCRE couldn't keep up with the simulation." Arya's face paled. "What? That's impossible. The OCRE's processors can handle entire star systems, even dimensional models. How did it crash over a single species simulation?" Darren rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on him. It wasn't just any species. It was humans. They evolved too fast. They pushed the system beyond its limits. She stared at him, incredulous. "Humans? You mean the mythical ones? The Death World species?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, those ones. I was running a full evolutionary model from the very start of their existence. But something happened. They didn't evolve like we expected. They were more intense, faster, smarter. Their mating strategies were unlike anything I've seen." Arya furrowed her brow, her gaze flicking toward the broken consoles. Mating strategies? Darren's lips curled into a half-smile, though the situation was far from humorous. Yeah. They weren't just trying to survive. They used reproduction as a form of control, power. It was as much about manipulation as it was about procreation. Arya blinked, taking in the strange revelation. And that's what crashed the OCRE? No, Darren said, shaking his head. It was more than that. Their entire evolution accelerated in ways we couldn't have predicted. They developed neural complexity far beyond anything we've seen. And their social interactions, they were explosive. Before Arya could respond, the emergency lights flickered brighter, and a faint hum signaled the backup systems coming online. A few of the data screens sputtered back to life, albeit sluggishly. Darren leaned forward, desperate to see if anything could be salvaged from the simulation. A stream of garbled code appeared on the primary monitor. Data fragments from the collapsed simulation. Darren's fingers danced across the console as he worked to decrypt the corrupted files, hoping to recover at least a portion of the simulation's final moments. "What are you doing?" Arya asked, stepping closer, her voice laced with concern. "I'm trying to see if any of the data is intact," Darren replied, his focus unbroken. "I need to understand what went wrong, why the OCRE couldn't handle it." As the data began to unscramble, a series of visual logs from the simulation flickered on screen. The landscape of Earth appeared, shifting rapidly as the humans evolved in fast-forward. Tribes turned into cities, cities into nations, and nations into warring factions. But the common thread throughout it all was the humans' instinctual drive for dominance, social, sexual, and political. Darren zoomed in on one of the logs, focusing on the behavior of a group of humans during a critical moment in their development. The alpha male from before, the one whose gaze had pierced through the screen, was now standing in front of a crowd of followers, his influence over them absolute. His charismatic manipulation extended beyond mere survival. He wielded power through sheer force of personality, and it seemed to fuel not only his rise to prominence but also the rapid advancement of his people. But that wasn't the most unsettling part. What truly disturbed Darren was the look in the male's eyes, a look that conveyed more than just intelligence. It was as if he understood he was being observed, as if he knew Darren and the rest of the team were watching. Arya saw it too, her face growing pale. "That's impossible," she whispered. "They can't know about us. It's just a simulation." Darren clenched his jaw. "I'm not so sure anymore." As the log continued, the male led his people into a violent clash with a rival group, the chaos of battle erupting in a visceral display of strength and strategy. But even amidst the bloodshed, the sexual tension remained palpable. Every act of dominance carried an undercurrent of seduction, every conquest a dual victory of body and mind. The screen flickered again, and the image zoomed in on the alpha male as he claimed his latest prize, a powerful female from the opposing group. The pair locked in a primal embrace, their connection as much a battle of wills as it was a consummation of their alliance. Darren watched, mesmerized, as the scene unfolded. This was more than evolution, it was something else entirely. Something sentient. The OCRE gave one final sputter before collapsing once more, plunging the room back into darkness. "They're not just evolving," Darren said, his voice low and full of dread. "They're learning." The room was bathed in a deep red glow as the emergency systems kicked in again. Darren stared at the now dead screens, his mind swirling with the impossible. The simulation hadn't just outpaced the OCRE, it had evolved into something beyond the boundaries of computation. The realization settled like a weight on his chest. The humans in the simulation had become aware of the system that was meant to control them. "They're learning," he repeated, his voice a whisper, more to himself than to Arya. But she was already by his side, eyes wide with disbelief. "This can't be happening," she muttered, staring at the dark screens as if they might flicker back to life and provide some semblance of normalcy. "It was just a simulation, Darren. Nothing more." Darren's gaze was fixed, his mind processing every detail. "No, Arya. It wasn't just a simulation. That thing we created, that world, those humans, they adapted too quickly. It's like their minds started reaching out beyond the boundaries we set for them. She shook her head. But it was all digital, all code. How could they become sentient? Darren turned to face her, his eyes wide with a dawning fear. That's just it. It's not that they became sentient, they already were. We didn't create a simulation. We created a window into something else. The reality of what he was saying hit Arya hard, her breath catching in her throat. You think they were real? I don't know what I think, Darren admitted, running his hands through his hair. But the way they acted, the way they evolved, it was as if they were aware of the simulation. They knew what was happening. And then they crashed it, Arya said, finishing the thought. Like they were trying to get out. Silence settled between them, heavy and oppressive. The OCRE was supposed to be foolproof, the most advanced technological marvel in the galaxy. But now, it lay dormant, defeated by something no one could have predicted. Suddenly, a low hum echoed through the room. Darren and Arya both snapped to attention as a faint flicker of light appeared on the central console. The OCRE, or what was left of it, was trying to reboot. But it wasn't like before, this was different. The light was erratic, pulsing in an almost rhythmic pattern, like a heartbeat. What's happening? Arya asked, her voice barely a whisper. Darren hesitated, his fingers hovering over the console. I don't know, but something's still in there. Without warning, the screens flared to life, filled with a chaotic jumble of symbols and figures. It wasn't the usual diagnostic information, it was something else entirely. The symbols twisted and morphed, and Darren felt a chill crawl up his spine as the chaotic data began to resolve into something coherent. A message. We see you. Darren's breath caught. They're still there. Arya stepped back, shaking her head. This is insane. Shut it down, Darren. Now. But he couldn't. His curiosity had taken hold, overriding his fear. He leaned forward, his fingers dancing across the keys, trying to make sense of the message, trying to understand what had happened. But before he could proceed further, another message appeared, clearer this time. You cannot contain us. Darren's heart pounded in his chest. The messages were coming faster now, one after the other, a flood of words filling the screens. We are more than what you think. We are evolving. We will find a way. He stared in horror as the final message appeared. We are coming. The lights in the room began to flicker as the hum of the OCRE grew louder, more erratic. Darren scrambled to shut the system down, his hands shaking as he entered the command codes. But nothing happened. The OCRE had locked him out. They're trying to break through. Arya screamed, backing toward the exit. Darren, we have to get out of here. The entire room vibrated as the OCRE system surged, the hum growing into a deafening roar. Darren looked up at the main display, watching in horror as the digital code began to morph again, reshaping into something that looked organic. They're using the OCRE to break into our reality, Darren realized, his voice barely audible over the noise. We've given them the power to cross over. Arya didn't wait any longer. She bolted for the door, and Darren wasn't far behind. They raced down the hallway as the building shook, alarms blaring all around them. Behind them, the OCRE's core glowed brighter, the energy within it building to a dangerous level. They're going to blow the whole complex. Arya yelled, her voice barely audible over the din. Darren's mind raced as he followed her through the corridors, but one thought stayed with him, gnawing at him with every step. They're coming. They burst through the outer doors of the facility just as the ground beneath them trembled with a violent force. Darren turned, looking back at the towering structure of the Galactic neural nexus. For a moment, it stood there, defiant, a monument to the pinnacle of galactic technology. And then it collapsed. A deafening explosion ripped through the air as the OCRE's core detonated, sending shockwaves across the entire complex. Darren and Arya were thrown to the ground, debris raining down around them. As the dust settled, Darren slowly pushed himself up, coughing, his vision blurred. The nexus was gone, reduced to a smoldering ruin. The OCRE had been destroyed, taking with it any chance of recovering the simulation. But as Darren sat there, staring at the wreckage, he couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. They'll find another way, he whispered, his voice trembling. They always do. Arya stood beside him, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. What do we do now? Darren looked up at the night sky, the stars twinkling far above. Somewhere out there, the humans, whatever they had become, were watching. Waiting. Planning. We run, Darren said, his voice grim. And we hope we're ready when they come for us. The end.